Carlos de Oliveira. He's the property manager at Mar-a-Lago and the third defendant now to be on the Mar-a-Lago documents case being prosecuted by Jack Smith, the special counsel. He had his initial appearance today in court for conspiring with Trump to obstruct the government's months-long effort to retrieve national security documents. He didn't enter a plea at his very brief 10-minute hearing. Why? Because the same playbook that they do in Trump land, he didn't have a Florida lawyer to represent him. And if you recall, the same thing happened to Walt Nauta, right, where he couldn't be arraigned and the case got delayed so that he could hire a Florida lawyer. Not sure why Mr. Oliveira couldn't find a Florida lawyer over the weekend, but he could not. And so he had a Washington, D.C. based lawyer named John Irving represent him. And so the case was put over till August 10th for him to get a Florida lawyer so he can be formally arraigned in the case. Remember how we've said many times on Legal AF that the Trump strategy, his number one court strategy is delay because he doesn't want a trial, right? His whole defense strategy is no trial, get myself elected, and then either dismiss the case when I'm in charge of the Department of Justice or pardon myself. But, for any crime past, any past crimes or pending. And so that's what he wants. He wants delays. And every time one of his henchmen, whether it's Waltine Nada or it's Mr. Oliveira, 10 days here, 5 days there, 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, the case is going to get pushed out. Remember, Judge Eileen Cannon scheduled this for May of 2024. So now we have a superseding indictment. We have another defendant. He couldn't be arraigned. Let's say this doesn't go until July of 2024. That's a 2-month trial. You're pushing into September, and some of the early voting in this country starts in September. So you're treading into dangerous territory. But their strategy seems to be working. He got the case put over until August 10th for arraignment. So he didn't enter a plea at this brief 10-minute hearing, but Chief Magistrate Judge Edwin Torres released him. And this time, which is unusual, the defendant got a $100,000 personal surety bond, and he was ordered to remain in the Southern District of Florida, which means the geographical area that the Southern District of Florida, which is a court district, essentially. The courts are broken up into various districts, and the Southern District of Florida encompasses numerous counties in South Florida, with Fort Pierce at the north and Miami at the south, and then there's an east and west border. And he has to remain in that geographical area, and he cannot have any contact with witnesses in the case except through his counsel. Of course, he can speak to his co-defendants, right? Donald Trump and Waltine Nada. And the prosecutor gave his attorney the list of the witness names that he cannot have contact with. Now, we assume that Trump is going to pay for his lawyer the way he does. He keeps his people close to him so that they can't flip on him. This is not a guy who was in Trump's inner circle. They didn't have really any dealings with each other. But of course, they did have that 24-minute telephone call that the indictment talks about the day before. The day after they get a subpoena from the Department of Justice, right? So Trump is suddenly, this guy is his best friend and he needs to keep him close. He's going to probably pay for his lawyer. And, that creates a conflict. It's because what if, for example, Mr. Oliveira decides it's in his best interest to want to cooperate, which it is in his best interest to want to cooperate. He shouldn't go down with Donald Trump. And, but he feels if he does, then he won't have his lawyer paid for and he can't afford his own lawyer, or he's afraid that his attorney will tell Trump's attorney that he's going to be cooperating and then risk the wrath of Trump. That's who wants that. We know what he does to anyone who he believes is disloyal to him. Why did he get a personal recognizance bond in the amount of $100,000? Why was there any bond at all, unlike Trump and Walt Nada? Because this individual, Mr. Oliveira, apparently has an expired American passport, and he only lives in rental property in Florida, which, those are all factors that go into a judge's determination of whether he has strong community ties and whether there's a risk of flight. And so for whatever reason, they must think that there's a potential risk of flight here. And, that's sort of what's going on here. Now, what are the accusations against Mr. de Oliveira? It's that he plotted with Trump and Walt Nada to delete security footage from the cameras outside the storage room, that he worked with Nada to examine the security cameras and told the property IT person, employee number 4, who everybody thinks is cooperating, Mr. Taveras, right? Everybody thinks he's cooperating because he also received a target letter, but he has not been charged. He's also, he told him, right, that the boss said, he wants him to erase the server. And of course he said, well, I don't know how or something, well, of course he knows how. He's the IT director. His conscience got the better of him and he knew he shouldn't do that and he didn't. And so he's probably cooperating with Jack Smith. And I think that my best bet would be his cooperation is what's leading to these new charges against Trump and Mr. Oliveira and Walt Nada. So also Mr. de Oliveira, he also lied to the FBI, denying that he knew anything about the boxes, even though he had personally observed them and helped move them. Like I said, his formal arraignment will be in August 10th in Fort Pierce. It'll be handled by a different magistrate judge than Judge Torres, who was here. One question that will be interesting to figure out is, when are Trump and Nada going to be arraigned on this superseding indictment? They were arraigned on the initial indictment, but it's now a new indictment with new charges. So they have to be arraigned again. So will that be August 10th? Will it be another date? And, where will that arraignment be? Will that be in Miami? Will that be in Fort Pierce? So the prosecutor was asked that question today, and his name is Jay Bratt, and he said he'll have an answer for the judge soon. So another low-level person was caught in the nest of Trump's scheme. And, it was, the timeline here was, Trump called Mr. de Oliveira for 24 minutes, as I said. And then 2 days later, Walt Nada and Mr. de Oliveira went to the security guard booth. And that's when they walked with a flashlight to the tunnel to point out cameras. And then a couple days later, Mr. de Oliveira approached the IT expert, Mr. Taveras, who told him, the boss wants the footage deleted. And Taveras said he didn't know how. He also lied in a voluntary interview, saying he didn't help Walt Nada move the boxes. So that's what's going on here. And, that's what's happening. Mr. de Oliveira was charged in this superseding indictment. And hopefully, and superseding indictments, just so you know, are very common. They're fairly common, actually. And it just means that investigators have gotten more information since the first indictment. And so they supersede it. And I think Jack Smith did it here because, he originally asked for a December indictment, but he sees the writing on the wall when Judge Cannon set the May trial date that they're not going to get a quick one. So they're going to supersede it because it's not going to go anyway. And that's where we have it. So stay tuned. Lots going on. And thank you for listening. I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo with Legal AF. I'm a co-host. And thank you for your support to the Meidas Media Network.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.